I'm ready to go.
So next and finally, we have our beloved student chaplain, Rob Patton. I think everybody knows Rob. He's ubiquitous and beloved on the campus, and this is a great moment to see you kind of come to this culminating presentation. And feel very personally proud of my relationship with you and the work that you've done. And so give Rob's title here, it's up here, Rob's Resuscitation Manual, and that's part of his project that he did something for himself that may apply to others. And he's giving us a guide for care seekers to create their own self-care resuscitation manual and advanced directives. Thank you.
Reminds me of Hard Fire, and Jamila said, "It's Brother Rob." And it's my brother Rob. Yeah. So yeah, a guide for care seekers to create their own self-care resuscitation manuals and advanced directives. The next slide. It's been my honor the privilege to be campus chaplain with the Joanna Macy Center at Europa this semester with Michael Bauer and Rachel Frick, my co-chaplain. And through the work that we connect with Joanna Macy, we always start with a grounding gratitude practice. As we work through the work, the spiral of the work that reconnects. So it gives us strength to face our pain for the world and to move forward, to see with new eyes and to go onward. So I invite you to recall a challenging moment or time in your life when you felt resilient because you had self-care resources and the support of others to draw from. You could go ahead and hold that moment in the silence of your heart or reflect on it for a minute. Now I invite you to cultivate gratitude in your heart for this memory, for how it can be a resource for you going forward in your life. You might want to seal that in your heart if you feel comfortable with it, holding it inside, or closing your eyes, however it feels comfortable to you. But may that be a treasure that you can draw from. So my resuscitation manual, how it began. My family endured a challenging time together. About the time my wife at the time, we were getting divorced, and she suffered a series of really life-threatening illnesses that were challenging. And so it was hard to try to keep the family together and to support my kids who were very young, tweens at the time. And so I needed to have concrete self-care resources at the ready. I needed note cards that I could touch, not have to fiddle on my phone with. And these are the actual cards. Like, butterfly hug. Thank you, Liam Zeitz. I'm enough. I'm okay. I'm enough. I'm okay. And the clipboard. It's been through all some little updates, but that's the same clipboard, the same notes from last time. But I asked the question, how would my loved ones, if I was not able to hold it together, how would they know to really care for me? Would they know the most effective ways to revive me or resuscitate me if I was the one who started to go down and not hold everything together? So that began the sense of this, a resuscitation manual. And I kept thinking of this phrase, "Dear reader, thank you for breaking the glass." Like if you're going to go out, and like my old apartment I lived at, there was a little hammer. You had to break the glass to get the fire extinguisher out. Or if you're going to go get the defibrillator for people. So that's my introduction. It's stuck for years. Thank you for breaking the glass and retrieving my resuscitation manual. Thank you for noticing that I have not been like myself lately, but I might even be in crisis mode, hanging on to survive, far from feeling like I'm thriving. I wrote this resuscitation manual because I do want to be revived and I need your help. I want to live and thrive. Thank you for your care and compassion. So we made it through that stressful time. We parented our kids together. My kid's mom is looking very healthy. And so it was a nice, smooth time and enough that felt safe that I could transition to grad school and even move out here to Colorado to do that. And to finish the last 2 years after being online. But then this resuscitation manual idea reawakened the first semester of grad school, and I was also still working and had a few little panic attacks about trying to pull it all together and made it through that. And so then in our integration lab process circle, I began to share my idea for the resuscitation manual with our favorite self-care strategies. And our facilitator, Shamba, planted the seed that it could be a capstone project to help others, not just myself, but to help others create their own resuscitation manual. Thus, the subtitle for my capstone project, a guide for care seekers to create their own self-care resuscitation manual and advanced directives. And it was through pitching our ideas in our capstone class last semester about what I was really doing that it finally clicked, like, oh, these are like medical advanced directives we would leave for emergency personnel to come and save us and know how to best care for us. They'd know our illnesses or what our end of life directives were. So there's key components for understanding yourself to contemplate, to create your own resuscitation manual. We need to know how we're wired so that it can keep us in what keeps us in our resilient zone. And Elaine Miller-Cross speaks in community resiliency model and the trauma resiliency model that our resiliency zone is that zone where we can still function even with stress. We can still be rational, we can still make decisions, we can still keep it together. We haven't yet gone into the zone of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So understanding ourselves, kind of like Lucy's presentation, helps us to keep in that special safe resilient zone. So how am I wired? So here's life support for an ENFP Gemini Sun, Sagittarius Moon, Aquarius Rising, Gen Xer. You don't need to know about astrology. It's not really that in there. That's just kind of how I label myself. But we are going to do the ENFP and the Gen X part. Okay, so Myers-Briggs personality, temperament, and the 5 love languages play a significant role in helping people understand their needs going forward. So Myers-Briggs personality, temperament. I'm an ENFP. Any others in the house? We're agreed. So translation, what's an ENFP? So that means I explore the wonder of the world with extroverted intuition and curiosity, and I verbally process my experience. So I make decisions in an introverted silence of my heart, and I might retreat there to the cave of my heart for long periods of time when my sense of reality or what I know to be true is threatened. So my neurotic experience, that would have been learning about emptiness and swirling towards nihilism, and it'll help save me from that. But so if you were to see me for long periods of time and know that I'm not in my verbally processing extroverted self, and I'm retreated into a cave, that's a warning sign that something's up with Rob. Help him out. I need that help. Okay. The 5 love languages. So Gary Chapman. I think it's Gary Chapman. Correct me. Okay. Physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, and acts of service. So for me, physical touch is always key. Hug, sit next to me, so forth. It's like water for a wilting plant. When I'm challenged or towards the end of being pushed out of my resiliency zone, I need words of affirmation. I need that reminder that I'm cared for, loved, and worthy. If I'm all in the flow and everything is great, then quality time takes the spot for words of affirmation. The words of affirmation plays a key role in that for me in my own resuscitation. Asking for help. Can Gen Xers ask for help? Oh my God. We were raised to be independent, self-reliant. That's the last thing a Gen Xer wants to do is ask for help. But I think I've learned and been encouraged that it's the healthy thing to do. It's hard for us, so So I lead care seekers into when they create their resuscitation manual to work through these steps, asking for help. What do you feel about that? Feeling alone or needing space. For me, I don't want to be alone in this. Please keep a vigil at the entrance of my cave. If I know you're at the entrance of my cave, I'm good. Okay. Listening and problem solving. Please listen to me. I need a sounding board, or please help me solve a problem, or read the rest there. Next. Permission to intervene. We have to let our care seekers know what's okay about our intervening. I know what I'm doing. Don't tell me what to do. Heard that phrase before, possibly. Or maybe what's better for me. Please butt in, call me out when you are concerned for me. I can be stubborn and bullheaded, and I might resist. But if you are concerned, call me out on it. I also ask care seekers to consider their warning signs that they might be leaving their resilient zone and going into crisis. They'll consider their signs that their core wounds from childhood might be activated. They'll consider their own unique struggles and how to support them. Like maybe it's autoimmune diseases that maybe make them have to withdraw for long periods of time. And it could occur suddenly. And I ask them to consider agreements to make with their support people. So agreements like communication, even when you're stressed out, or I'm promised to be your care provider, not just a cheerleader that's just going to let you just get away easy, get off scot-free. So the manual begins with my manual as an example. So here's a short example of my preferences for linear problem solving and permission to intervene. And it's full of tables, next one. So the care seeker, when they create their own, will do their own check boxes. And I give them a space where they can write a little understanding so their care providers can have a little more nuanced information about what it means or what kind of touch or so forth. Again, all within the sense of consent. Being with me, giving me space. So those options I read earlier, they also appear here with many numerous ones, and they can write their explanation of being near me, giving space. When they're all completed, I offer another table where they get to take their top 5 from each category, whether it's strategies, self-care strategies they'd like people to do with them, or just to make sure that they get done. So they have a list when they're all finished of all their preferences and their top 5 that they can reasonably grab to and maybe make their own note cards, top 5 note cards like I did. My big so what questions. I keep hearing my clinical pastoral education educator, Joe, in our class. So what? What's the big question? Why care? So one of the big questions for me was, how would I know if they got something out of this manual? What have you learned about yourself now that you have completed your resuscitation manual? People may have had the experience of being able to let go of a limiting belief or something that might have kept them, well, let's say frozen, or maybe a fear they had, or maybe a self-care strategy they thought was good. Doesn't really work for them, especially with the other lists. Do you feel more resilient as you face the future now that you have your resuscitation manual to support you? Yeah, I hear Joe's voice again. Rob, you're asking a closed question. You're going to get a yes or no answer, so I rewrote it. In what ways do you feel more resilient as you face your future now that you have your resuscitation manual to support you? And will you share your resuscitation manual with your support team? I ask that question because sometimes, putting all this out there is a vulnerable step. And I realized that I've kind of done that with the whole world now that has my capstone. They've got my information, but I have all these people that can care for me every month. Right? So, and then, but so the person could make the agreement all right, I'll tell you where it is and only break the glass if you really think I need it, or here it is, see intimacy, seeing, intimacy is a sense of intimacy. Would you feel more, I rewrote the question, would you feel more resilient and supported if you shared your resuscitation manual with your support team? Because the other last question was like, no, I'm not gonna share it. But this question opens the door. Would you feel more resilient and supported if you did do that? Feedback from those who have completed their own resuscitation manual. When I finished my rough draft, I sent it out to many people. And so a classmate at the who's in charge of a wellness division in a company she works for, has asked for a version that she can give to employees because she said, I have something needed like right now. They needed it yesterday. Another classmate said their exploration of the Myers-Briggs personality and temperament and understanding of the love languages and preferences helped them to contextualize what I expect from others in terms of care. And so they hadn't really put those words to it before. My resuscitation manual, or the guiding them through the process of creating their own, helps people to have that sense of what would that look like if I did say yes to this particular type of self-care intervention. They also said, I like that I was able to see in black and white what works for me and what doesn't. Personally, I have the tendency to be hard on myself when a specific self-care technique doesn't work. Like, darn, I just don't like bidding or podcasts. What's the matter with me? I love it because these are their words, but this has really helped present them. It really helped, they said, when I presented them as just one of many options on an equal playing field. So they can see like, okay, I'm not, if I like this, I'm not bad either way. Okay. And they said, you awaken some agency in me where I don't feel like my responses to triggers are so irrational and automatic anymore. Having a chance to really look at themselves deeply and know their triggers, to know what activates them, help them to see that it gave validity to those activations and to those scenarios that might cause that to happen. So rather than have stigma or shame for those, they felt validation. My takeaways for this big work. This project helped reaffirm something I learned in my meditation retreat with the School of Lost Borders in the high desert of California in November. And one guide, wise guide, Sylvia, shared with me sacred selfishness. And I needed this reframe so much because, yeah, I know, put on your mask first and then you can help other people. But to me, it was selfish. I mean, wounded healers with a servant's heart. Chaplains were like, we're outward facing. But to say, no, this is a sacred holy act to care for yourself and don't treat it as a sacred holy act to be selfish. Do that first. Has been a game changer. Not perfect by any means, but it's really helped me to give myself more. Permission is not good because that's shit, forming as permission still gets me back to like, okay, I'm just gonna shirk permission. Next one, I was thinking that maybe the big takeaway would be that people would have a better self-knowledge of themselves, living, less limiting beliefs, knowing what strategies work better for them, and knowing that they might feel more resilient, that they have a resuscitation manual, and that they have friends they could give this to or support people. But I thought that was the big prize, but there was something waiting to be discovered. The meaning of myself, according to Richard Schwartz, in internal family systems, and what he also equates to Buddha nature. So it's the sense of meeting myself, and we can go to the next one. You're okay, I've got you. It was a deep, like I felt in the desert with my School of Lost Borders community, a real sense of being held, a sense of being, knowing that despite all of this that I had, well, it was a direct perception experience of viscerally, like I felt it in my body and I knew like without words that I'm okay. And I've met my indestructible essence, transcendent essence deep inside and my basic inherent inner wisdom and basic goodness. So that I hope for care seekers who work to complete their own resuscitation manuals and advanced directives, that they have a unique experience of their own true essence that lets them know too that they're safe, that they're okay. Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions?
Yes.
That's great. Thanks for the accessible.
I'm curious if did you look at any psychiatric advanced directives when you were doing this? You know, it's kind of like a movement in the field of people that, you know, might anticipate that if a severe depression recurs, you know, they can write their advanced directives before that happens. So they're not caught in this cycle where maybe they're refusing care because of the state of mind that they're finding themselves lost within. And it's just a very complicated ethical conversation in the field. So I think this is a interesting, really nice contribution.
For a future iteration of this.
Yeah, it's you know, because sometimes and I know some of you have a lot more experience with cultures outside of the North American, you know, culture that so highly values autonomy. But in some cultures, it's okay to sort of gently override someone's autonomy for their self-interest or just for their well-being, you know, but in the kind of medicalized North American culture, if someone is refusing care, you can't really override that and just unless they're really causing harm to themselves or others. But I like how this has a communal feeling to it, like which is what the psychiatric advanced directive movement is trying to do too. You can think ahead and say, no, it's okay if you can override my autonomy in certain circumstances, and I'm, you know, going to negotiate that ahead of time before we get there, so that if I'm in a profound depression or just something that's really overwhelming, I can still ask for help for my future self, you know? So it's interesting, you know? Interesting dynamics, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, thank you, Rob, and yeah, it's been just an absolute joy having you here, and I just see you on campus and helping our students, and I just deeply appreciate everything that you've offered to our community. So I just want to thank you for that. I wonder if there's like a special Gen Xer edition that you could come up with. That was a joke, but kind of not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But actually, you could like turn this into an app. You know how you have like an emergency contact details on your phone?
That would be, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Picture that.
Like I can picture it being like something that you have and that, you know, that could be accessed and certain people could have access to it or something like that. But I'm thinking about ways of, you know, monetize it too. But yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I give specific instructions on how to like, you can, you know, print this as a PDF, and if you open it, you know, some PDF readers, you can actually, you know, type in the X's, so you do that. But that still feels like not primitive, but the app would be amazing.
Yeah, like a little thing and you have it and it's sort of locked, but you know.
Yeah, just, you know, push the buttons on your phone, it's all done, and share.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's really obvious from what you're saying that there could be clusters, there could be mandalas of these manuals, you know, that you were working from your, you know, your experience and what you need, but it would seem that there would be clusters of people that would have a center of gravity of different styles of care, like, you know, the 5 Buddha families or whatever you want to say, the Myers-Briggs groups or whatever it is. So you could have multiple manuals, you know, if you worked with different people, they might come up with different manuals and you could see how these groupings start following the manuals, and then the app would be flexible for different types of
the
people.
millennial edition.
Yeah.
And elderly.
But yeah, maybe like a website, you know, with all these that people you could collate, but then, you know.
There's a chaplain that I met at, I was at a conference last weekend, and he was saying that that he looks at the person's birth chart before he goes in, and then he, you know, reflects on I mean, usually you don't have the time of birth, but the day, and that influences his, you know, interaction with people. So, you know, if someone has a lot of water signs, he'll kind of like just be watery
That's-
and expect watery energy, you know, and Gen X, I mean, we share this whole like Pluto transit that
Yeah.
only happens every whatever 30 years and we're all in the same. Yeah, we're all in the same Chiron return if we're all, some of us are around 50. And so, you know, just recognizing that, you know, that some of those things are, I think it is helpful to recognize that different
Yeah,
people
writing
need
that down
different
on
things.
It's for me,
Yeah, you need to
in my
look at
chart, I have air and fire, and I don't have the earth and water. So that for me, I guess the future version of this would say, I know for my own self-care, that's why in my resuscitation manual, it says like, you get me outside, get me in nature, get me to rocks, forest, Boulder Creek. We'll do our rituals at Boulder Creek. It was just so nurturing. So putting me in water or out in nature is key for me. So yeah, it's part of that.
So after the war is exactly where you in the tree.
Please, pray for a hot day or not.
So I have ideas for you too.
It's suddenly turned into like dragons, like, yeah.
As you were talking, I was taken back to, I was a TA for my own teacher, who was the World Wisdom Chair holder here, back in the late 90s. And I was TA for a class, he got to create whatever classes he wanted. And he created a graduate class called Rituals for People Helpers. And people that were in helping professions, they were psychotherapists, they were chaplains, etc., you know, ministers. And he had a class for them where they created their own self-care rituals. And so I can imagine an extended edition of this where it's like, these are the things you do to rejuvenate and take care of yourself because you're helping others. And so, given that you're a chaplain, seems appropriate. But the question I want to ask now that I've given you
Give me the book to my
is in the semester where you've been campus chaplain, have you seen the application of any of this work when you got the Sun office open and you're available to be chaplain for somebody? Have you seen some application of this?
I think of one student I know in particular, it helps, I think, having time with other students. No one that had given me their resuscitation module ahead of time, it may have helped. But there's a student that I'm aware of her healing background, her current ministry work she does on the side, her shamanic work, and she needs to be, it was kind of as if I did have her resuscitation manual. I knew that she needed to be grounded. And she kind of was able to verbalize that too, but it's like, she was all up in her head. And she needed to be grounded on the ground. So it's like, she sat down, what do you need? I need to lay on the floor. I need to feel the earth on my back. Okay. Do you want me to stay in this chair or want me to sit next to you? She's like, sit next to me. And she's like, I need pressure on my feet. Okay, so push down her feet. And she's like, And then she started knowing, like, in her tradition and also in my shamanic tradition, it's Bakshi lineage. We make noises, like just get the, it's like anybody, let the energy out, move the side. And she was so in her head, and pretty soon all these silly noises became like laughter. And it was just like this joyous time. And she's like, okay, she's progressing out. And then she said she made the most amazing, unique request, and you got to witness this. She's like, would you go barefoot with me and spin around in the grass on the green and run, spin around in circles? Like, sure, that's what you want. I know what's happening. Okay. So we run out there to the green and we just started spinning like it was like Sound of Music, Julie Andrews on the hilltop. And then there's some tunnel in an Aikido class, and they're like, this, and someone's like, they saw it, and they actually were able to recall that memory recently. And they're like, remember you guys spinning on the green? And then it was also a day when there was snow, under the roots of the sycamore tree, the snow had melted, but across the sidewalk toward the flags, there was still snow. And so we were kind of like done with our thing, and I pointed to snow, and I said, snow? She's like, yes. So we ran out there, still in bare feet, and we're picking up wads of snow and watching the sun sparkle, and it was just a magical moment. But I knew that what she needed in that moment, fortunately, having and knowing her background. And so the resuscitation manual would really help if I didn't know her before. But that sense of like knowing, get her out of her head, get her out in nature, help her process the energy. That really helped a lot.
It was a process of questions. You asked her a series of questions, just like the manual.
Yes, thank you.
Creating her mind.
Yeah, yes.
Any other questions? Comments?
How maybe we can share it with Tyler. He's like, wow, it's passionate issue all the time.
No, but he's connected.
Yeah.
Really does sound like an app, I have to say.
Yeah.
Like, it's really like sending message reminders at certain times of the day, like.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Not another coffee. Yeah,
Personalized, reminders.
yeah. See, I'm
That's-
telling you, it's really.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to Rob and to all of our graduates and.